Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. For us tuning in on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and X, we're glad you all can be with us. We're going live now with our friends over on IG as well. They're connected with us. We're about to bring in also our friends on Amazon as well. I have a very special guest that's joining us for today's topic that gives us two of my favorite things, books and food. So I think you guys are going to really enjoy this. And we're live on Amazon Live. So if you guys are new to us on the Amazon platform, welcome. Make sure you guys do hit that follow button. You see it either here in this corner or down below. You also will see the book by our next guest. We're excited to welcome Veeda Bybee to our broadcast today. She's the author of this book, A Few of My Favorite Things. And as I said, merges two great things for myself. We're going to talk to Veeda not only about her love of cooking, but the shared experience she's been able to have with her family and now with us as readers as well, sharing some great ideas that we can be able to try with our family and friends, or maybe just solo if you like myself. If you guys have any questions or comments for Veeda, you guys can put those in the chat. We do have the chat open for you guys there. But Veeda, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Look, the pleasure's definitely all mine. I want to shout out our mutual friend Kim Wise for setting up this conversation with us for today. And when she first pitched me this book, it was going to be a yes because it had food. But but then I got to know more about you as well and your family, Veeda, through a few of my favorite things. Let's talk about that part first. What has it been like for you to kind of open your family and your love of food with the world?
I love that you brought my family into this because they are the ones who really speared this love of musicals for me. Like I grew up loving them, but they helped bring it back.
Gotcha.
And cooking with my kids it's not like the easiest thing sometimes because, sometimes it's much easier if you get done, if you just do it yourself.
Yeah.
But it gives us an opportunity to like talk together. And I've seen them grow in their openness to try new things. Like my son, Gray, he's 13 now. And I feel like for the first maybe good 9 years of his life, he never ate a vegetable. Like he was so against them. But I've seen him like grow out of that. He eats salads now. And so like, I feel like, it's been really neat to see them change and to be open to different things, but also like share this experience of cooking together and also get like their input of like, oh, what do you think of this? Or what recipe do you think we could, make for this movie and that kind of thing. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the other part that I love about this. So for those who don't know, a few of my favorite things, you guys probably know where that's a reference from. And that's one of the things Veeda's been able to do. Now, Veeda, I love television shows and movies and musicals as well. My friends will tell you I use normally TV and movie references all the time when it probably doesn't need to be, but I like to do it when something seems to fit. How did you take your love of musicals and movies and then decide on how they were inspiring these dishes?
Well, it happened because of the pandemic and the shutdown, and we were just together. And, and it's kind of like this thing where we wanted to find something to do together that was also a little low key.
Mm-hmm.
So, watching a musical every weekend, we did it for a whole entire year. And that was kind of mind blowing to me that we did it. But, and so I would bring a recipe, whether from the time period of a musical or a theme, or maybe it was a play on the words, and we incorporated it into that night. And so it made it an event. And, we had more time, so I could spend a little more time making some recipes that were a little more time intensive. But I think overall, if you're doing this with your family or with other people, it doesn't have to be a really big deal. Like it doesn't have to be a whole meal. Just like one dish will really make it memorable. And I'll just tie it into having the experience of watching a show together, but also like partaking of a dish together too.
Yeah. And that's one thing I love about this too. The book is not intimidating. Now, there were some things I'd never heard of before, Veeda. I think that's part of the shared experience, but also the learning that you can do with your family and friends. But also, I love the fact that you're able to give us some very simple things too. I want to give this example that can be used for Grease or The Greatest Showman on pages 88, 89. That is the T-Birds Rockin' Chocolate Cherry Cola Float. I told my mom about this. And because she loves floats. So I thought this was a really cool one. Was that also part of your hope that as you were kind of compiling the book, and Veeda does share some great stories. We're going to talk about that too, Veeda. But was that part of your hope that people would find things that were, that they could say, you know what, I could do that too, and then be able to put their own spin on it?
Yeah, and it's been interesting to hear from people which recipes they try. I kind of figured a lot of people would try the very first recipe, which is a very approachable one. It's a Baroque French toast. You're making it with Texas toast. You're cutting like a really thick slice of bread into 3 pieces. and making French toast sticks.
Mhm.
But I've been surprised to hear all the different recipes that everyone is making, and it ranges from something simple, like a float, which I have loved. I just loved ice cream floats, and I wish I lived in those times of grace and the diner food. So I'm hoping I want someone to bring those Coke floats back, and all those different things. But there's also more advanced recipes, like there's a baked Alaska, which I've never had in person, like outside my own home, because that doesn't really exist on a menu, at least where I am. But that goes with Annie, because that was mentioned in the musical Annie, and I had a lot of fun creating that, and just that one's more intensive, but I feel like there's a good range that you could try.
Allie Delsimer is joining us over on Instagram. Allie says this is so clever. Allie, it really is clever. And it's a great way, again, for people to be able to try different things, especially when it comes to bringing a few of your passions together. It is musicals or movies. Of course, things from The Greatest Showman here, The Little Mermaid. So there's a lot of different options. But Veeda, the other thing that I thought, and you and I were talking before we went live here, that I love about this book, because I literally was just saying to Allie earlier, I love stories. That's part of why I started getting in this business 22 years ago, is because I love hearing people's stories. I got to know you, and readers will get to know you, and part of your connection with family in this book. Did you know that was going to be a part of it when you first started the project?
Well, I love the fact that you got to know me through the cookbook a little bit. I didn't quite think of it that way. I did include like a head note before the recipe where I do explain why we picked it, or maybe a little bit about my family or me too. And I think recipe writers can do that. I mean, I have one of my favorite bakers in the world. Her name is Dory Greenspan. And I would when I first read this baking cookbook of hers, I would just read it in bed like a novel, because I just could hear her voice. So I'm very flattered that you feel like you also felt like you got to know me a little bit through that process too. Because as we cook, we are sharing a part of ourselves with other people.
Yes.
And I think it's very connecting.
Yeah. So when did you know that something like this was not only needed, Veeda, but I was curious, when did you know something like this would be received? Because I think a lot of times there are a lot of creative people, and I put, chefs, individuals who are able to do amazing things in that kind of creative bucket. A lot of times you think, I like this, but I don't know if other people would like it. What made you say, you know what, I think other people will appreciate this too?
Well, years ago, I had a food blog. So I did want to have food as part of my life, but I ended up giving it up after a few years. It was really intensive and it was a lot, but I still had that love, and I still love to cook. And I have most of my professional experience as a children's book author. So when this project came about, I was just talking to a publisher about some of my work, and they asked oh, we love to include recipes with our books if you have a recipe. And so I told them oh, I love to cook. I just did this project with my family for a full year, and they're like, oh, pitch us that project. And so it was a surprising thing where I actually didn't expect this to come like a published cookbook, because I feel like most food people have a huge following, and I just don't. So as a writer, I always think in the back of my mind, oh, this could be a project, but feasibly, I didn't think that would happen. But I do love how the things that we are attracted to, we never know where they're going to take us. And I think that's the great thing about life. It's so multifaceted. We can be a lot of different things, and the things that really inspire us, they may have a place, years down the road. Like that food blog, all that experience, it really was a part of my trajectory too.
Yeah. And I have to say, on a selfish note, Veeda, for myself, as someone that I was sharing with you, my love of cooking and appreciating food differently came from my grandmother. And I'm sure for an audience that maybe it was their mother, but I was around my grandmother the most. Then the latter part of her life, I was her caregiver. So for 10 years, I cooked all her meals. So I got able to gift her that at the end of her life. But what I wanted to bring up was that I think what this book reminds us of is how we can use this as a bonding time too, right? Because is it pronounced Selah? Your child's name, Selah?
Selah, my youngest.
Selah.
Yes, yeah.
Just like we're able to find out about things that that your family liked, and being able to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to be preparing this meal. What would you like to see added? And I think having that kind of conversation and connection, is that one of the things you also hopes comes from a few of my favorite things, Veeda, that people can kind of make it their own.
Yes, and I sincerely hope so. Those recipes that you made with your grandmother, or I made growing up, those are all derivative of a recipe that someone else made, but but we do add to it.
Yeah.
And it's this experience we create. I have a recipe in there for wontons, and they're my mother's recipe, but I've made them my own too.
Yeah.
And I feel like just that skill of cooking, she's the one who got me into it. I don't think I was a very good cook until I became much older. But I feel like she's with me when I cook. I feel like she's kind of there too.
Yeah. I remember I was telling you one of my things my grandmother loved was my cornbread, which she taught me how to make. And I remember the first time I made cornbread after she died, I cried and laughed the whole time because I was thinking about the memories of her. She used to sit in the dining room as I was cooking, and she wanted to taste things as I was cooking. And so I would remember that first. So a book like this kind of reminds me of those memories. And it really, you've created almost a time capsule. Have you thought about that? That you kind of created a time capsule of that time with your family too through this book?
Yes, because when I've gone through the hard parts of when you're editing and you're on deadline, it feels like this is just really hard. I took all the photos, I did all the recipes, and it felt overwhelming at times. But I remembered, even if the book doesn't ever go anywhere, but I have this for my family, and that was really special to think these recipes are written down and they will have them. And I think we don't have to have a published cookbook to do that. We can just do it on our own as well, and that time will live on, and so I think it helps us reframe that shutdown time as a positive spin too. There were a lot of really hard things, but this is one great thing that came from that hard thing we had to go through.
Yeah. Speaking of Selah and her love of sandwiches, I want to show our audience this. I love this photo. My family loves sandwiches too, so we just love food. But I mean, things like this. I mean, there were literally even just pictures before I actually read them just made me smile because it's like, wow, that looks. For one thing, for me, it's like, okay, that looks doable, but also that also looks like fun. To be able to do that. Talk to us about your own fun with food, Veeda. When did that kind of start for you?
So growing up, we had this cookbook in our house. It was an orange binder of Betty Crocker's just like a kind of your basic home cookbook. And I loved it. I actually, I have our family's copy. So it's like from the 1980s and it's pretty battered, but it has a lot of good memories. I just remember reading the baking section and just seeing she had this recipe for a cat cake. And it's just like how to form, two 9-inch circle pans into a cat. And I just wanted it, I just love baking ever since then. But I didn't realize, I just didn't think I was good though, because when I would make things, especially with baking, I was using what I thought was butter to make like frosting or cookies, and it never rose or turned out or was fluffy. And it's because all we had in the house was margarine, but I thought that there were sticks of butter. And so I grew up thinking, oh, I'm not a very good cook. My baking isn't turning out well, but I still didn't give up on it. I still liked to do it. So when I went to college, that's when I realized I was with a roommate and she's like, oh no, we were shopping. And she's like, that's margarine. This is butter. There's a difference. Oh.
Yes. Look, I have learned that from my mom.
Okay.
When I'm in town, Veeda, she always on Fridays, I go grocery shopping for her, and she makes it very clear that she likes her butter and not margarine. So I have definitely learned that. And again, it goes to that whole aspect of connection. And that's one of the cool things too. It has to be a great thing for you too, Veeda, to talk about the musical side too, to be able to have people think outside the box when it comes to ways they can be able to bring those things into their home, right? About, bringing something from, the Little Mermaid or Greatest Showman or Frozen into their home. Is that part of the connection you also hope they're able to take away from it?
Yes, and I think there's power in musicals, especially more than a movie, because when we are watching a story unfold, that's bonding. But if there's music added to it, it just takes it to another level, and it also creates this touchstone. And so whenever you hear the song, you'll be immediately transported back to the moment when you were watching The Greatest Musical, or Annie or anything like that. And I feel like music has that power to do that. It gives us that connection to that moment, to that film, right away. It's something so powerful. So I think musicals are really special. And I'm glad I got to revisit that again and kind of take this deep dive and introduce it to my family and watch it through my kids' eyes as their experience for the first time. We we have this family tradition where we watch Scrooge on Christmas Eve. And I've always kind of bugged out on that because I'm like, I don't want to watch this old movie about, Charles, the Christmas story, not Christmas story, Christmas Carol again. But during that year of musicals, I did watch it with them, and it was really transformative. Like I actually love the music of Scrooge, and it was fun to have the kids see the transformation of Ebenezer Scrooge along with music too. So that was really fun. I love the fact that I'm this many years old and I can still be open to new experiences and I can change too.
So true. And so true. And I think getting us to look at things differently for sure. I hate to put you on the spot. I don't like to do that. But so I won't ask you what's your favorite recipe, but I will ask you, what did your kids find the most fun, or what were some of the ones your kids found the most fun and enjoyable?
One of the recipes they loved the most was probably the Baroque French toast one because I made
Okay.
it so much because I was trying to get it right. And
Okay.
they're really, but they're just, my family just loves breakfast. Like we cannot come to an agreement on pizza or even like burgers sometimes because someone doesn't want to have a burger or whatever, but they're all about breakfast for dinner. And I read about that too. So it's this funny thing where it feels so like rebellious to have breakfast for dinner. Thank you for showing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So that was
Hey,
one. The kids they just love it when I make that.
got you. Got you. Well, and I think again, being able to add your own spin on it is one thing, but also to feel like you're connecting with people through food is so much fun for sure. As people pick the book up, and again, it's here available for our friends over on Amazon. I'm going to highlight it for you guys. You guys can get a chorus edition like I have here for $19.99. They also have the Kindle edition here for $12.99, so you guys can be able to travel with the book as well, which is also fun. What do you hope when they pick up a few of my favorite things, Veeda, that the book does for them?
I hope that when people see the cookbook, they can try something new, but also feel like they can add to it. So if you're watching a movie and you think of a different recipe, like if you want to do two, so it's just all these things where I don't think this is a set thing where if you see this one musical, it has to be this one or try different things. And I think as we like open our minds to things, I love being inspired by stuff. So I hope it's
Right.
inspiring too.
Yeah, it totally is.
Thank you.
It's a beautiful book. And again, I'm so glad that we had a chance to talk about it. Again, everyone, Veeda Bybee has been our guest. A few of my favorite things is a book we've been talking about here. You guys can get it right here on Amazon. Thank you so much for the follow over there. Kim's watching us over there on Amazon. Appreciate you being with us, Kim, as well. Where can our audience go to stay connected with you, Veeda?
I'm mostly on Instagram at Veeda Bybee. So it's just my name, VeedaBybee, all one word. So I post mostly on there.
All right. And we'll make sure that we link that up for audience as well. Veeda, again, congratulations to you on the book. Great conversation with you, and looking forward to our next chat together.
I would love that. Thank you so much for having me.
We're glad to do it. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents here on Amazon Live. Until next time, you all make it a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.